Welcome back to the WCS America Challenger League qualifiers. We're here in game number 2 between XY and Center. Top Chinese player versus one of the better Korean players from Team Quantic. Center won game number 1 really off the back of a great contain on XY.
That was such a great contain. I mean, using the MMM as an ability to just go wherever you need to in a moment's instant is exactly what the weakness of mech play is. You know, seemingly XY had a really strong army, but was able to push out and break most of the contain. But it doesn't even matter because once you break the contain, then your forces are somewhere where the MMM is not.
Definitely the problem XY had during that game. Yeah.
So the map here is going to be Akalon Wastes, and our two Titans now once again going at it. Do you think it's going to be a 2-0, or do you think we're going to see a 2-1?
I feel, you know, I think it's going to be a 2-0. I think it is. Judging from last game, I mean, XY showed some great macro. I think he out-macroed Center, considering he actually fell behind in the beginning, then he basically got ahead in food, then he lost a lot, he got ahead in food again. But unfortunately, he just didn't know how to deal with that contain, and that's such a key part of TVT is knowing how to deal with tactical situations like that.
You know, I completely agree with you. I think there's the possibility, considering this is a TVT, you know, you have those mirror matchup builds that just hopefully can catch an opponent off guard, and maybe you can, you know, shroud what type of build you're going for enough that you can actually get some sort of surprise attack. But, you know, I'm thinking as well it's going to be a 2-0. But let's introduce our players. Spawning down here in the bottom right-hand corner from Team Quantic, our blue Terran player. It is Quantic Center. Spawning up here in the top left-hand corner, he is XY, our red Terran player.
And he's already opening things up a little bit differently, going gas before Barracks, so we could see either some crazy, strange Reaper opening I've seen a couple times, or more likely just a very fast factory.
Very weird there was he actually took a couple of seconds to actually get all of the workers in gas. Was just spent one worker, then two, then finally three, instead of throwing all three of them in there immediately. So a little bit of an interesting choice. Maybe just he knows exactly the timings of how much he needs to get that 100 gas so he can throw out that factory as soon as the barracks finishes up.
Definitely. These players, of course, have their builds very well figured out. You know, I have to say, I love Mech TVT, but I'd like to see XY play Bio. You know, he seemed to be really great at building up the forces last game, and Bio versus Bio, if you can out-macro your opponent, you can often just overrun him. But in Mech versus Bio, it's a little bit more of a positional game, and that's where Center outplayed him in the last set.
That's quite true, and you know, the thing about Bio is that you have to be incredibly multitask heavy. I don't think I really saw a showcase of XY being multitask heavy. Sure, he was able to keep those those Hellions running around the entire map, but I don't know if you know, that's at all his playstyle. I mean, I know every player has their strong points and their weak points. Maybe XY is really good at getting that macro up, maybe getting a couple of really good key positions. And I think Quantic Center maybe just got one key drop position on XY's army, and that was able to deny him the ability to get that fourth base. So maybe XY just always feels more comfortable getting that mech army.
It could be that way. We see very similar openings to last game. XY going for that Widow Mine drop build, whereas Center going for the reactor, then the expansion, then teching up. Last time he showed a stellar defense from XY's opening, just using basically Marines, a Widow Mine of his own, and a Viking.
Yeah, and you know, I'm really curious to see if XY is going to be able to make something happen a little bit more with those Widow Mines. Yeah, it forces out the scans, but when your opponent is going to have a command center above you, it's really, I mean, a command center ahead of you, it's going to force out those scans, but he's going to have so many SCVs that is that scan going to make the match that much of a difference?
Sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. You know,
true.
often we see this build followed up with Cloak Banshee, and the idea is you make them use a lot of scans on the mines, and the Cloak Banshee comes in and reigns in their parade. So we'll see if XY goes for that. He does have the double gas a little bit faster this game as opposed to last, so he may be looking for that follow-up. The other key thing is, last game what really hurt him is that both his Widow Mines were spotted with a single scan.
Yeah.
I mean, difference between 1 and 2 scans early on in the game is actually huge. Every little bit matters when opponents are in a low econ situation.
So here comes that medevac now moving across the map. It's got 2 Widow Mines and 4 Marines in its cargo bay, and we're going to see if that's going to be able to do enough damage. Now, Widow Mines really tiny units, but for some reason, I mean, it makes sense balance-wise, but for some reason, takes up 2 slots. Marines, huge 10-foot tall humans, only take up 1. Marauders, I mean, they're kind of large. But.
Well, no one wants to stand near the Widow Mine in the medevac.
Oh, I like this. The Widow Mine actually going to be one of those burrowed Zergling that Terran always hate to deal with. You're going to have to scan in order to actually put down the command center. But here comes that drop once again into the main base, and actually not going to be able to do that much. Gets warded off pretty quickly as Center's forces are already there.
Nice defense by Center so far. He hasn't had to use any scans yet. That's going to make it much... Oh, a Widow Mine running from XY gets taken out by those the Widow Mines that Center put out there at the front. So
we saw that last time too. He really likes to put that one Widow Mine in the natural, but it seems like Center's just always been ready for that. And here comes that orbital command center. It's going to get that access denied. The landing has been, I don't know, uninitiated for whatever error. One of the most frustrating things in the world, especially because the one thing that can scan is already in the air and you can't land it. So he's got 50 energy, but unfortunately that's the thing that's in the air. He does have another 50 energy on the other one, so here comes the scan. Actually going to spend it on a Marine.
Oh, the medevac's cornered by Marines and Vikings in the main of Center. It's going to have to land its units because it was going to die anyway, but they all get taken out. A big win for Center.
Yeah, let's take a look at that unit's lost habits. 500 resources to 100 right now. Center, once again, getting a little bit early dominance in this game, especially with that command center already being out. And that attack really just not doing that much damage, except kind of denying that orbital command center for just a little bit longer.
The question is Center going to be ready for this Cloak Banshee follow-up? The first Banshee we can see now is approaching the natural. As SCVs get transferred down, they're going to be vulnerable to that Cloak ability. But Center, he still has the scan saved.
He does. Since that orbital command center couldn't land, it actually does still have that scan. And smartly does not actually go into using that on a mule, possibly because he, like yourself, already knew that this is a type of follow-up that comes after the Widow Mines.
A Widow Mine drop from Center, actually going into the natural of XY. 2 Widow Mines buried, getting just 2 SCV kills, but they scratched a few others.
And once again, that's going to force another scan out here from XY, and that's just more and more resources he doesn't want to spend on having to deal with these pain-in-the-butt Widow Mines. And here is the Banshee coming in once again. It's got 6 kills, 7 kills. No scan. There's a scan. I was waiting for the scan to come in here. And looks like Center, once again, going to be in a pretty good position, but not huge, actually. 37 to 33 in the income.
Yeah, these... you know, he's really making it work here. The Banshee's doing so much damage from XY. The first Banshee took 2 scans and got 7 kills. The second Banshee already using up one scan, getting 2 kills. He has to be careful about that missile turret. It's about to finish. Run, Banshee.
He's not paying attention.
Still fairly effective.
Yeah, incredibly effective. I mean, 41 to 34 in the worker count. I mean, XY threw himself right back into the game. Unfortunately, he's got a whole bunch of idle SCVs kind of hanging out here in the main. They're slacking off instead of actually doing their work. I don't know, maybe they're having a beer with each other. But here comes XY going to actually also grab his 3rd base very early, too.
He did that last game. Israel really likes that 3rd base. Cloak Banshee trying to take away from this push. Gets taken out. XY has a smaller army. He's got to be careful. He has no high ground vision either.
Oh, yeah, this is actually very dangerous. He's got a whole bunch of his siege tanks waiting right next to that ledge where he has 0 vision of. And he's going to know where Center's moving the forces, but he's going to be way out of position.
Maybe he can try to do a sandwich?
Oh, sandwiches are great, but I don't think it's going to save him right now.
Center realizes.
Center pulls back.
That was a smart call. If he went up that ramp, he would have ran into a line of SCVs, a siege tank, and then right behind him would have been the extra forces from XY. So instead of going for that frontal attack, he's going to play a little smarter approach and siege up from the low ground here.
Very smart here from Center, using the position that he threw himself into to get an advantage. And I mean, that's exactly what Starcraft is all about, you know, noticing what position you're in and getting that advantage. But the Vikings, are going to get taken out here by XY's Marines. Well, one of them at least is. But can this throw Center back into the game in income?
Well, he's definitely getting a lot of lost momentum from XY until The rocks went down, and XY just shifted those SCVs over to the third base. What's going to be key here is XY wants to wait until he has enough units to really charge that tank line. He doesn't have stim or combat shield or 1-1 yet, so his army isn't that great, but if he can hit overwhelming numbers, he can definitely take that force out.
Oh, and here comes that push. There are a lot of Marines, there are a lot of siege tanks, but they are somewhat clamped up. They're actually not sieging. They're just going to try and break this without sieging up, and it looks like XY is going to lose a good portion of his army, but not enough to actually lose this engagement. He is going to be able to clean up Quantic Center's forces.
Wow.
3 Marines barely stay alive up here.
How close was that?
Wow, that was I didn't even know what to say because that was way too close for me to call.
Wow, XY called it though. He said, I got this. Charge down. Retakes his natural. And you know, now he's got that extra expansion. Of course, Center does have a third orbital, but he hasn't yet taken the time to move it down to the low ground. He's also been cutting a lot of SCVs out of his build, really prioritizing instead just cranking out these units. He's moving out again for a second wave.
He actually doesn't know that there's a third base gain here. So Center's going to move out, and he's going to try and do a lot of damage, but the thing is that he doesn't know that there's a third base. So he doesn't know that the entire time that Center had him move all of his SCVs away from the natural, that he was still mining anyway.
Oh, Bob and the Marines checking on that third base.
Oh, he's going to see the rocks are down, but does he see the inside? He does see a lot of Marines there.
He's got to assume it at this point. I mean, it's a pretty safe assumption to make. Oh, Bob the Marine gets absolutely blown into bits.
Yeah, that was
probably
not a pretty end there for Bob.
No, not a smart move.
What about Bob?
It's a great movie. XY now has his stim and combat shield, and 1-1 is finishing. Center's moving out, but he doesn't have stim or combat shield. He only has a single attack upgrade. This is an opportunity where if they engage, XY, I think, would just run over Center's army.
Yeah, and that's exactly why Center is kind of pulling back right now. He knows that there's that third base. He doesn't know how long it's been up, so he's playing it very safe. He doesn't want to guesstimate and say that the third base just barely went down. He's going to take his own third base. He's going to try and catch up. But unfortunately, XY is already moving on into 2-2 upgrades for his MMM.
XY definitely has all the edges going forward as far as production facilities set up, double factories, plenty of barracks, 2-2 upgrades on the way, the mech upgrade on the way. Third base has been up for quite a while now, and Center just recently got his third setup on that right side.
More and more barracks is going down here, so you know what? You got your wish. XY going straight on into Marine Siege Tank instead of just pure mech here. And you know, I completely agree with it on a map like this where you have such a large amount of airspace where you can take a lot of medevacs and get a lot of really good positional advantages. I think Marine and Siege Tank is actually a very good choice here.
XY agrees. Oh, the Marine's got to be careful. Oof. Oh, Center's going for it. Barely gets back in time. That could have been massive casualties by Center.
Both of these players just getting their Marines run in and run out as soon as the siege tanks get into position. Losing 1 or 2 Marines there, but of course that forces the siege, and it's going to buy XY a little bit more time and delay Center from being able to do any type of aggression.
Kind of a standoff there in the middle. Center says, well, if we're going to have a standoff, time to initiate the drop play. He's going to head over along the left side, try to get something done there. XY has a single missile turret over at his natural, but I don't know if that'll quite be enough unless he's fast and pulling some additional Marines to reinforce it as well.
It's not enough, actually. With the boost, now medevacs take a minimal amount of damage when they're going against missile turrets, but here comes a little bit more of repositioning as both of these armies try to posture themselves into great spots. I love the 2 little Marines here on the on this upper lip that's going to be able to get high ground advantage and make sure that XY is not going to sneak a couple of siege tanks up there and try and get into such a great position. But here he comes trying to section off that third base. XY moving a couple of siege tanks and a lot of Marines in there. Is he going to be able to pull back so many? Marines and siege tanks were lost there by XY.
XY was busy trying to defend that drop play, not looking at his main army. Center's starting to pick him apart. To drop it in natural gets a lot of damage. To drop into third, Center's taking a nice advantage going forward here.
Yes, he is. And looking at the units lost tab, workers killed is up to 30 right now here for Center. Let's take a look at the income. 42 to 64. Center's now way ahead.
This is not where XY wants to be. He's also stuck in a semi-contained. At least he's in a position where he can get a 4th base pretty easily. But it's still a situation he really struggled to deal with on Daybreak as well.
Oh, and here comes another. Oh, wow. Even pulling in siege tanks. Looks like we're going to see actually a drop that's going to go on into the main, possibly.
Oh, he's just going to set up a great position on the third base.
Oh.
If he sieges his tanks right here, it'll control the bottom of the ramp, perfectly positioned. XY's Marines trying to stream in there, but they're going to be massacred.
Oh, and actually, Center's Marines were not on an attack move, and they just kind of walked into a whole bunch of tank fire. And once again, we're having another huge battle going down here in the middle of the map, but it looks like XY is getting into a somewhat good position. Going to try and take out the single siege tank and a lot of Marines over here, and that's going to deny a lot of mobility for Center. And it looks like XY is actually able to clean up the third base aggression as well.
Oh, if he gets these upgrade buildings, that's going to be absolutely huge. Upgrades so important in Marine versus Marine. This game has turned around completely. That drop did not work out for Center. His army was then too small to subsequently hold the central position. XY surging in here, taking out both the E-base, the armory, and orbital.
And let's take a look at the upgrades tab, because that's actually really instrumental. That's denying the armor upgrades here for Center. And Marines do a lot of very small damage. Those armor upgrades are incredibly important. And a very small amount of Marines here are going to get caught by XY. Hopefully he does not move too far forward to all those siege tanks. Actually, a nice scan going down here by XY, going to be able to pick off 1 to 2 more siege tanks.
Oh, now the fourth pace from Center is under fire, having to pull the SV to supplement. He should take this one, but with the speed boost, Minivex get away just in time. And XY with a series of great moves is suddenly, I would say he's, I don't know if he's winning, but he's in a decent position.
He's at least evened it back up from what Center was getting advantage-wise before. Here comes a nice little drop, and actually going to kill 1, 2, 3 siege tanks. Is he going to be able to get a 4th and 5th? Oh, the siege fire barely takes out the 4th, but doesn't kill the 5th. 3 health left on that one. Here comes the comsat scans, and that's going to allow Center to get 1 more kill here. And here comes a surge forward from Center. It looks like he's going to be able to break this position here of XY's. And Center taking the map a little bit once again.
Center really wants to get all the engagements going on right now because he knows he's not continuing those upgrades. He lost those buildings. He wants to try to retake his position and deny the 4th of XY again for as long as possible. XY had some great moves there, but he's still only on 3 bases.
Center hasn't rebuilt his natural. He just deemed it a lost cause. He's going to stay on 3 bases by having the base down here as a planetary fortress and the orbital command center. Actually not mining gas from there. He just wants to worry about the minerals. There's the GG. The stim forward just completely taking XY apart. Wow, that was such a good game.
A really intense game that you can really see why a lot of people say TVT is kind of like a game of chess. It's a lot of posturing. Then all of a sudden one player decides it's time, starts setting the pieces in, and everything just goes into a crazy mode after that.
Oh, man, we've been having so many back and forth games here today. This has been a great set of series so far. I'm really curious to see what the next series is going to be.
Yeah, it's just we'll definitely get into another series lined up soon, but here you can see it's Center pushing forward. Too many units, even with the weaker upgrades there. XY with a little bit of an anti-timing, taking these battles right before his 3rd attack upgrade completed. And once that completed, would have given him 2 attacks over his opponent's armor, and he would have been able to make those Marine trades much, much, much more effective.
But of course, that's the unexpected. I took out your upgrades. Now you know. I'm gonna attack while my upgrades are weak, while everything is kind of on the line here, and that's really just completely caught XY off guard. So looks like our next game is going to be Kawaii Rice versus the
Muslim.
The Muslim.
Yeah,
yes.
We're gonna get that one lined up. This is a round 2 match. Of course, Kawaii Rice. I can't remember who he beat. Was it Trimaster?
Trimaster.
Yeah, I think he took out Trimaster in round 1. We'll figure that out in a second. But we'll be into Kawaii Rice versus the Muslim just after a short break.